The most important piece is the utilization of data that already exists in front of you. You're being ranked against the other leaders in your marketplace. It's a competitive space. How do you become the best in your given space, right? Like that's a big piece of it. So
one of my shortcomings as a team leader is that, I gave them the script that I used day one, right? But this is this is 8 years, 10 years of experience versus 10 days or 10 weeks or 10 months. There is so much ego involved in the industry.
I had talked to team leaders and they're like, how the heck can you manage 100 people? When I'm rotating capacity, I'm catching when my star players are hurting because they won't tell me. Go to any competitive athlete. Do you think they're going to ask to come out of the game? Do you think they're going to be like, hey coach, I need a breather? No, they want to be in there. They're attacking. Like they always think they're the best.
I really truly believe that one of the biggest things that gets in the way of team leaders' growth is treating their team like a family, right? And like, oh, I don't want to have the hard conversation with so-and-so, right?
But as a coach, you have to be good enough to say, no, you're out. Not because of your ability, because I know how winded you are based on lead flow. That's what these team leaders need to hit the numbers that they've dreamed of, right? Like it's all just systems and actually learning how to implement those systems into your business.
Welcome to the Refuge Playbook Series. This is Danny Gould. We are here with Keith Anderson, number one team. Well, debatable, right? But number one, number two, oscillating between number one,
always
number two.
number one
team, baby, in Arizona, per real trends. And today we're going to talk about Zillow Flex. Yeah, Keith, and specifically the accountability and what you've done over the years, and even more recently, building out these like really cool systems, which we'll go into, I'm sure, in a second, to increase the conversion rates, increase your, obviously like the amount of connections that you guys are getting month over month. And so for context, just to start, how many connections are we getting per month right now? Give us some like high level performance metrics for your account right now.
Right now, we're anywhere from 350 to 500 connections a month. So those are live connected to individual agents on the team. And so we're one of the largest lead earners, if you will, in the whole country for Zillow Flex.
Gotcha. Okay. And for context here, like a year ago, were you at those numbers or were you at a different connection?
That question, I guess, is kind of loaded because Zillow overall, so percentage of total Zillow leads, we're at the highest we've ever been, right? But, as market shifts, Zillow might be receiving as a whole vastly more connections, right?
Sure.
And so we've been around that. We've been as low as 200. We've been as high as 500 probably over the last, few years. Yep. But then maintaining the higher percentage slots is important. And to keep in mind that Zillow as a company has downshifted from over 150 Flex team partners to now at about 30. So you're talking about 120 teams or entities that were on Flex for Arizona, Phoenix Metro are no longer on the platform. There's literally only 30 of us left. And so to have, and a big part of it is also Zillow Flex's volume has decreased massively over the last few years. Interest rates, the market conditions, all of these things affect total lead volume from the distributor. So if you consider they probably are receiving about a half of what the connections were at that time. So us maintaining our lead volume is basically more of a conversation of we're receiving a massive market share of what the total Flex volume is for the Phoenix Metro market.
Got you. So your I would say like your market share has increased year over year. So you've always like kind of consumed more and more market share.
Yeah.
Do you know where you stand in regards or in relation to like other teams in the Arizona, or like in the Phoenix Metro?
Yeah, we're back and forth like 1 and 2. So when it comes to production and a lot of the metrics that they grade on, we're top of the list every single month between 1 and 2. And on a per agent count for lead volume and lead flow, we're the highest in the marketplace. So we have the highest total connection volume on a per agent basis.
That's awesome, man. So let's just start like super high level. I know that we're going to get like into the nuts and bolts here for the majority of this, but like, why is what we're going to talk about important? Like, cause here's the thing, right? Like there's going to be two types of people that are watching this right now. Either this is a team that is already on Flex, right? And they probably understand why this is important, or it's someone who like me previously, like I was super interested in getting on Flex. And so I was trying to consume as much content as possible to figure out like, how can I get my team on Flex? And so why is what we're going to talk about important?
So I think it starts with knowing the psyche, if you will, of what Zillow Flex and Zillow as a company is doing as a whole, and how every market is, I would say, built around it and built around certain things. And so it starts with understanding that not every single marketplace in the country has Zillow Flex. It also has to be understood that more and more markets are being added to the Flex platform. And so the very beginning stages of being on Flex, every team in that marketplace is given an opportunity to excel and show that they can scale and build. And I mean, if you think about it, if we're closing Flex leads at an average, let's just use ballpark numbers at about 10% conversion rate, right? Okay. So we get about a 1 out of every 10 as a unit of scale. 1 out of every 10 connections we get goes into contract and closes with our team, like as a reference point of scale. So if we add 100 connections to our platform in a given month, that means 10 more contracts sold and closed for our team in a given month.
Yep.
For a lot of teams in the marketplace, that's a big difference. Like imagine if a team overnight could add 10 more units of production just right away, just 10 more units. And every single month, that's 120 contracts a year. Like some of these teams are only doing 120 to 200 connections a year. So to think that one little movement or one little piece of growth could open up this opportunity to generate an extra 10 contracts a month, which is thousands of dollars worth of revenue for your company, it's a big piece of opportunity. And so a lot of these marketplaces, you have to understand that Zillow is looking for certain pieces and certain things, and they want to grow with certain people. And it doesn't make sense for them to have all of these entities on their platform. Okay. And so here's the other big ticket is if these teams that listen to this podcast or see a lot of this stuff, if they understand that they're in a marketplace where they're a hybrid market or they're in Flex market or Flex is coming eventually, they've already talked about it in their press releases. They've already mentioned it across the platform. They don't want 150 partners per marketplace. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make feasible sense as a company to spend your time nurturing 150 different entities when 30 to 40 or sometimes 10 to 20 can facilitate the entire lead count of the entire marketplace. So if you're one of the 150 and you know that Zillow is going to downsize to 30, how do you stay on the platform? How do you show them that you're going to be a top producer and then also use that to your advantage and actually scale your business like we did? Because it's really easy to turn over and die if they know that 150 people are on the platform and they're going to downsize it to 25, 30, right? And I don't even think it's done in Phoenix Metro. Like in all reality, it probably needs to be about half of the teams that are currently in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. So if we have 30 and even that's too high, can you imagine if all of these 30 big teams and entities, it's going to drop to 10, 15? Like 15 of these entities are going to fall off. So yeah, it matters. And these markets are all over the country.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me. And so now kind of coming back to the nuts and bolts of it all, right? Because you just hit it right on the head. Like, how are you, like, what's the incentive for Zillow to keep you on the platform, right? So you basically need to demonstrate that, for lack of a better word, you got your shit together, right? Like you are able to.
Yeah, correct. Right. That's probably the layman's term is you got your shit together.
Yeah, you have to have it together because what are they concerned about? They're concerned about conversion rate, right? Because like the more you convert, the more you convert, the more, well, conversion rate. And then what else? What else is it that they're
yeah. So, and this is really, really key is Zillow understands the changing marketplace as well, right? And Zillow Flex has not been a profitable ecosystem for the platform for a while. Like it just hasn't. They haven't cracked that code, right? So referral fees have increased and different things have adjusted over the last few years. So they're really trying to tap into that ecosystem of making it make sense.
Yeah.
And the ancillary partner side of things matters massively to Zillow. Mm. And if you're a good in business, if you understand what they're doing, they make money from all of these ancillary pieces that they're launching and starting up. So if you play that game to a certain extent, you're going to continue to move up with Zillow. But more than anything, they are looking for what they would like to call an anchor. Okay. Like I'd put that in quotes. If you're not the anchor in their marketplace, you better find a way to become that anchor. And what I mean by anchor is you have to be able to follow I don't want to say all the rules, but all of the growth guidelines that Zillow has put in play, like they have, like, if you go to your Zillow rep or your Zillow like entity that's you're representing you and is connected to you, they call them GAs, and you ask, hey, what does Zillow want to see from a perfect partner in my metro market? Like, what numbers do they need to put up? In Zillow's perfect eyes, what would I have to be doing in and out every single month in order for Zillow to look at us and be like, they're our guy, like they're the one? And I think that's really, really key, because that's the North Star. That's the pinnacle of where we need to get to. So the whole other conversation is then, how do I get from where I'm at now to that North Star? Obviously, like that's a big piece of growth. But at the end of the day, Zillow wants to see a team that is capable of scaling while maintaining ancillary efficiencies as well as conversion rate. So they don't want to see their ancillary efficiencies tank on the basis of conversion rate, because if you're not making money from both boxes, then what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you're not helping them out in any regards. So it's a big piece of both. And so when you're looking at this, they want a partner that can scale. They want a partner that can continue to take more and more connections month in and month out without taking a hit to conversion rate and ancillary adoption rates, and are plugged into all of the partner utilization and all the products that Zillow has to offer. Now, legally, they can't come out and say it, but yeah, and it makes sense, right? They can't push and force anyone to do anything.
Sure.
That's the whole point. But as a good partner, if you want to grow with another good partner, don't you want to support your partner in every way possible? Like, and try and find a way to help them grow so they can help you grow. And that has to be the mindset. So Zillow wants partners that have that same mindset, so that we help them grow and they will help us grow. It's a give and take in a partnership and a relationship. It's not one-way street. So the key is they don't want to have that type of relationship with 150 teams. So that's where the scalability comes into play. If you're only receiving 10 to 20 connections a month, I would be literally terrified right now for the next couple of years. And if you rely massively on that as part of your business and you're only getting 10 to 20 connections a month, you should be worried, because Zillow doesn't want 100 teams receiving 10 to 20 connections.
Right.
They want 10 teams receiving 100 to 200 connections. Like, if you're using that as an example, like that's the way that Zillow looks at it, because they only need one rep to work with 10 to 20 teams.
Yep.
Whereas they need like 5 reps to work with 100 different teams. Does that make sense? Like, so that's the piece that Zillow wants, is to maintain conversion, ancillary efficiencies, and still be able to grow and scale.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so coming back to like how you're looking at this from, because that's like the macro, right? Like the micro, now I'm thinking, right? Okay, how do we best train our agents to, number one, convert, right? So that's where the accountability factor, like the piece comes in, right? Like all the systems and everything that you've built out to like ensure agent conversion rates are where they need to be. A, B, you're also having to train them on like, okay, how do we keep the client engaged with the ancillary partners, right? Like how are we, how are we increasing ancillary capture, right? And this is something that like a lot of teams, I think, especially the bigger ones, are already doing, right? They've got JVs, or if they've got mortgage, title, all those things baked into their offering, then they're probably already training their agents to do that to a certain degree. But I'm assuming, Keith, that part of your training program, or part of your like ongoing training, right? Maybe not just the initial training, but the ongoing training is not just teaching, okay, like how do we get you to convert, but also like how do we increase capture, right? On both mortgage and title, because I'm assuming like Zillow, like when you're talking ancillary, you're talking primarily mortgage and their mortgage and their title, right?
Yeah. And they don't have title in play right now.
Okay.
It's
just
coming.
mortgage. Okay.
So that's a big piece of it, right? So like, we know it's on its way. It's not necessarily here yet, but that's a big part. And so you spoke to something that a lot of actual companies are going to struggle with, because if you're an efficient team, you're also in the ancillary game, right? So I have my own massive mortgage company. I have my own massive JV and title. I have a lot of these other ancillary pieces. So to play Zillow's game and to partner utilize the way that we need to with our lead source partners, that means saying no to my revenue incoming, creating ancillary partners, and start saying yes to Zillow's. And that doesn't make me any money at all. So a big piece that the team leaders struggle with right off the gates is every single lead I send this way, I'm losing money over here. Yeah. Right. And so that's the initial battle that these teams are struggling with, is you have to learn how to lean in.
Yeah.
And understand that the bigger picture is vastly bigger than a few $1,000s here or a few $1,000s here. And so, because at the end of the day, if Zillow's creating those opportunities for me, like I have to find a way to leverage that as best as I possibly can. And what's more valuable to somebody? And that's the piece that you have to think about. Is it more beneficial for you to maintain that 25 to 50 leads a month and to get 1 or 2 mortgage transactions, 4 to 5 title transactions, whatever that looks like in your conversion rate metric, or add 100 units of production into play with the 100 more leads and go to 150 to 200 because you are leaning in on those ancillary partners. And that creates 10 more transactions in play, which then creates 10 more past clients you're adding to your database, and a lot of the client usage and all your other ancillary pieces that Zillow doesn't have in works, right? Like it's a big puzzle piece right now that we're trying to figure out every single day. But the teams that are leaning in and are creating opportunity, they're going to be more beneficial in the long run because those clients become our past clients, and those clients are now connected to us and built relationships with our team and with our agents. And so on the next transaction, when they have to sell their house, and when we go through that life cycle of buying a house and that journey of a client relationship, the amount of long-term growth we get from more closings is vastly bigger than one ancillary opportunity that shows up.
I think that's the part. Piece. Yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of the part that a lot of people kind of forget about, right? Is they look at the referral fee on Flex, and I always look at that as a loss leader, right? Because the most expensive, you look at any business, right? The most expensive transaction is always the first one, right? So whenever because the cost to acquire a customer is like a one-time thing, right? So you're always going to take the biggest hit on margin first transaction that you do with them. And then every single one after that, it's not free, right? But it's essentially free. Now there's, if they transact within a certain period, I know that there's like rules and everything within the Zillow, like the referral agreement, but it's a huge like opportunity, like over a 5 to 10 year window. I think the teams like yourself, right? Like
massive
25 to 30 clients a month, right? Based on your lead flow. That's like, what is that, like 300 or something, right? Like 400 something.
Yeah, we'll do anywhere from 400 to 500 closings
from Flex alone
a year, from just Flex.
Yeah. Just crazy. Because when you
why wouldn't you want to add 400 opportunities to your database? Like, why wouldn't you want to add 400 past clients to be able to nurture and maintain relationships with, right? And keep in mind, we're in this box, we're not paying for anything up front. Like, we're paying at closing out of profitability, basically. Like, what's to say that that's not the best thing there is out there? And so a lot of people do look at the splits as a negative play, but the cost of generating the marketing campaigns, managing the marketing campaigns, catching those eyeballs, then generating that call, putting it through an ISA feed channel, and then delivering it to my agents at a place where they're not looking 12 months from now, they're looking right now. They want to go see a house today.
Yeah.
Like, that's worth so much money. That's such a great opportunity. And even today, like, a big piece of capitalizing and conversion rate and helping agents convert more and do more is a big part of mindset shift and teaching them that I'm not looking at what Zillow is taking ever, or what the team is taking, or any of those pieces. I'm teaching them the dollar amount per transaction basis. Like, this is what you get from creating this opportunity. I need you to go show a house, write a contract, and put them in contract. And for that, you're going to make anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000. Is it worth that to you? Is a $5,000 check worth going to show houses to someone that wants to see houses today that you've never met before and writing a contract? Is that worth it to you? And when I have that conversation with an agent, it starts to shift their mindset. It's like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll make $5,000 today to go show some houses, and I'll put a check in the bank. But yet the mindset of so many agents today, they still think about like, yeah, but I could have made this. I'm like, no, you couldn't have. Like, that opportunity was never there. You never knew this person.
Yep.
You're not losing anything. You're only gaining. And so that's a big mindset shift that just needs to happen with so many people and so many agents. And a big part of us capitalizing in the growth side of things for Zillow is learning how to shape the mindset of our agents to understand that it's a process. It's get out, show houses. There's going to be some agents you show or some clients you show houses to one time, and they write a contract, there's going to be some that you show 25, 30, 40 times just based on the units. And there's going to be some that you show 5 times and then they're in credit repair and you have to wait a while. Like the whole piece of it is your average showing per client that you actually get in contract is the number that we can always start to look at. So if on average you show 7.5 houses or 8.5 houses, whatever that unit of measure is for your business or your team, is it worth showing 8.5 houses on average per closing if that closing's worth $5,000 and you have to write a contract? Like, is that worth it to somebody? And I think that's the mindset shift I start to get people on is like, listen, you're making $5,000 for every 8.5 houses you show. So get out there and show some houses. It's worth it at that point. And some agents' numbers much higher and some agents are a little bit more efficient and it's lower. But once you start shifting mindsets to what actually matters and the actual process, instead of looking at how much I'm giving away or, what opportunity I had and wow, the referral fee went up or this price point sucks. It's like people aren't looking at the rule and law of averages. If you close 20 transactions through Zillow this month as an agent on my team, how much money did you make in result of something you never had connection to? And so that's where that's a big piece of growth is helping mindset shifts in your team, in the leadership around your team and the people that actually want to be efficient with Zillow.
I think the people watching should know that Keith has received a lot, and KPZ has received a lot of praise and accolades from within Zillow for the accountability and the systems that you've put into place. And I want to spend some time there, Keith. So what are the core accountability frameworks and systems that you have implemented in your business that have allowed you to not just become the number one team in your marketplace, right, for connections, but then also allowed you to basically become one of the poster children, right, for Flex, because they love you, right? So you're doing something right, and I think that people should know what you're doing.
I think the most important piece is the utilization of data that already exists in front of you. Okay, because there's one thing to see data and be like, wow, there's a lot of data there. That's fantastic. I'm glad I'm doing good. Right? That's kind of the concept that a lot of team leaders are looking at it is, well, my percentages look good. I'm maintaining, but you're good compared to what? So it starts there. You're being ranked against the other, leaders in your marketplace. It's a competitive space. How do you become the best in your given space? Right? That's a big piece of it. So you have to be okay with being better than just mediocre because like we talked about earlier, they're not going to have as many teams on the platform. They're slowly going to cut from the bottom. So if you just are okay with mediocre, you're slowly going to become one of the teams that are cut. So it starts with that. And there's so much data available that Zillow is giving you without you necessarily knowing that it's already there, right? So it starts with requesting the data, having the data in front of you, knowing where to download the data, where to pull the entity data from Zillow and the connections that you're getting as a whole. But then there's a whole nother step in there, which is actually interpreting that data to tell a story that you can act on, right? Because you can have all the data in the world and see all the numbers, but if you aren't positioning it in a way that tells a story that you can actually make decisions on, then it's irrelevant. So what we were able to do, having, a big math background for me and knowing a lot of data analytics of things, I've built a lot of things on the back end and I've learned from scratch, right? And a lot of the data that I built was around truly understanding an agent's ability to produce, convert at a certain level of capacity. So knowing when agents are hitting their levels of capacity, when and why, and then also knowing what agents are actually performing and moving our team forward and which agents are just sucking the life out of your platform. So one of here's a great key indicator, for instance. You might have an agent on the team that is doing a lot of transactions, right? And so they're camouflaging their poor inefficiencies by volume. Happens all the time. I see it every time I look at a team Zillow account, which I do all the time. I pull up another team's numbers I can see and their data, and I actually interpret it for them in front of them. Yeah. And they start to see that and they're like, oh my gosh, I never saw this before. And I'm like, listen, who you thought was one of your best agents is actually bleeding you dry. And if you gave more opportunities and connections over here, you would actually make more money and Zillow would be happier with you. Yeah. Because the agent that's doing all the volume, right? They're closing a lot of deals, but they're doing it at a lower percentage basis. And on top of it, they're not buying into the ancillary pieces that Zillow is weighing like 50% of your overall team scale. So what happens is they're grading you on 3, 4, 5 different big things. You have to learn how to take all of that data and pull it all together and do a graded, weighted scale as an overall metric to display what agents are actually performing at the standard that Zillow is asking them to perform on. And then also looking at historical data for that agent, right? So we take 3 major pieces. We do a 90-day rolling average, a 180-day rolling average, and an all-time rolling average. And we weight them differently. We pull it inside a box, and we do it not just on conversion rate. We do it on 4 or 5 different metrics. And we take that entire, basically all that data, and we put in an algorithm and a formula around that we built to help give us a score, overall percentage to target market for each and every single agent on our team, against all the other agents on the team, and against Zillow's expectation as a whole. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. There's a lot of numbers that come into play there. But what it spits out is it's basically telling me, is this a person I want to have take 15 to 20 connections? Is this a person I want to take 5 connections if there's room? And is this a person I want to avoid even being on leads unless I absolutely have to? That allows me to look at where my weaknesses are at scale, and then helps me decide, do I need to recruit better agents right now? Or do I just need a more volume of agents? Or do I have enough agents and they're great? I just need to make sure my connections are going to the people that actually matter, the ones that are actually converting. Because if I keep sending connections to people that aren't doing well, that hurts me as a team, and it's pulling me down as a whole.
Okay, so let's step back a little bit, because first of all, you just gave like a bunch of like little gold nuggets there that I want to really tap into.
Yeah, let's dig.
For the people listening at home, obviously if you're a part of Refuge, you likely have access to some or all of the tools that Keith has just described, right? So we probably have access.
Or we've already had a sit down. Or you might have already had a sit down with me. I might have already personally built out some of these platforms for you on your behalf.
Exactly. And if you're not, then, well, that's a benefit of joining Refuge, I should say.
Reach out.
In terms of KPIs, so let's just start there. I just got to say, dude, when you were talking about algorithms and stuff, I started feeling like Zach Galifianakis and like that meme where you've got all like the freaking
with all the numbers, like when he's at the table in Vegas on Hangover and count cards. Yeah, that's every day. Like it's bad.
Yeah. That's just a day in the life with Keith Anderson. KPIs. Let's dig into that, because there's obviously like a lot of things that you look at, but like what are you said 4 to 5 big things that we look at. So like, what are those big things? What are those essential KPIs?
Okay, so to bring this down to, I guess, layman's terms to help you kind of wrap your mind around it as a whole, when someone's trying to get into analyzing data at the very beginning, there's KPIs, so there's actual variables that you're tracking, or units of measure that you're tracking, and then you're leveraging it against the variable of time. So those time or constraints are what help you filter your data to give you the percentages that you'd actually like to use in that formula. So for instance, the timelines I gave are kind of my limits of constraint, where I'm grading them over a certain piece, right? So I use 90 days to show me what agents have done for me lately. Right. That's really, really key. It also shows trends, right? So I'll get into what specific metrics here in a second, but 90 days is really key because it shows me how well is an agent performing right out the gate.
Sure.
Is this agent someone that can produce quickly from a call to a showing to a contract? Or does this agent struggle with pace in the last 90 days and they need 180 or more time to actually convert on opportunities? Maybe they're better at follow-up and they're worse at sales. Like they need nurture relationship type opportunities. So that's big. The 180 mark that I use on purpose because that's what Zillow uses against us. So they use us on a 180-day swing. That's really, really key. So they base everything off of a last 6 months rotation on a lot of grading metrics. So percentage to target market, and what our expectation goal is and how we're performing against that goal. It's based on 180 days, and that's their number one framework timeline. So I of course throw that in and weight it as well, because if Zillow is going to grade us on it, why would I not grade my own agents on the same metric they're grading me on? Right. Correct. That 100%. One's no brainer. Mm-hmm. The last one I use all time in, and I actually weight it less, because Zillow doesn't look at the all time score, which is kind of wild, but they understand that markets shift and things shift. But I still want to be able to see how well my agents perform over time, right? Because the units of contract still counts within a 180-day cycle, but it won't affect their individual scores. So I use all time to see what agents on my team do the best at follow-up. Maybe they're nurturing way better, longer term, way beyond 180, right? And some agents, they only capable of the 90 to 180. So you see some agents start to perform better over time. And then I can teach and grade to that as well, of like, hey, you're killing this long time nurture and you're there and you're available. And there's a place on every team for those type of people.
100%.
Because usually the people that are really good at 90 to 180, they struggle for their all-time rates as a standard, like actual grading requirement. So like if I took beyond 180, like if I did 180 plus to all time, they would really, really struggle in that box. Whereas, some of this balance happens for your team. So I use those 3 major time constraints to grade all of the metrics in play. And then, so some of the pieces that I look at, which are really, really key, is capacity is one of the biggest one, right? So I look at total leads actually received by every single agent on the platform. And I look at it as how many leads have they received month to date. So I can grade initial capacity of how this month's projection of leads is being routed. I look at a 90-day rolling average, a 180-day rolling average, and the all-time. So I can see like how many leads do they have in their overall total database, right? Like if they have 250 leads in their account right now, like that's a lot of volume that they should be managing and seeing. I'm also looking at where they're at in their pipeline efficiencies. So like how many of those are rejected or nurtured, or how many of those have they never even gotten a hold of, or have they been ghosted on, or are they currently showing houses with, right? Yep. So I'm looking at their capacity, if you will, is lead volume.
Okay. So we've got capacity. And capacity. We're measuring that month to date. Is it through a different, like a couple of different time horizons?
Different lens.
And time lenses. Yep. What else?
So conversion rate obviously is a very big one. That's kind of essential. No one gets paid if deals don't close. So that's probably the heaviest weighted one that I use in our Richter scale, if you will, for the actual analysis of our data. The other one is showing rate. So we this is one we don't weight as heavily, but we have in the mix. It shows me what agents are doing good, getting them into the car more than once, right? So met with rate is a big piece you see on Zillow. That's the initial meeting, like were you able to actually meet the client? But showing rate is a different scale for me, because we graded on our team as you don't become showing houses with someone until you've showed more than one property. That's essential. So it's like, it's really easy to go and open up doors and hope and pray. But to be able to create the opportunity to show more than one turns the individual from just a service of opening up that door, and it turns it into an actual client relationship.
Right.
So when you show multiple houses, you're giving yourself more time to generate that relationship and turn them into a client. So we use showing rate quite a bit. And then we also use ancillary opportunities, right? So we're grading our agents on how efficient are they on edifying the mortgage relationship and getting those transfers and those actual conversations, potentially pre-qualifications in play.
Yep.
And we're grading them on that ability. And then, over time, we're also adding in title. We're also adding in insurance. We're also adding a lot of these other pieces that are a part of the mix for every agent's opportunity of capacity.
Gotcha. So you're also measuring ancillary capture.
Yep, 100%. And we're blending it in. We're grading it at scale. And it's a deep dive, but once you see the numbers in that way, in that light, you can start to finally see what agents are actually creating efficiencies for my business. Who should I be rewarding? It fixes a big issue that a lot of teams have, because you have high ego agent personalities that are coming to you and they're saying, I'm your best agent. I'm doing all of this production. And instead of me having to get into that argument and that fight with them of like, I know I want to keep you here, I want to keep you on the team, I make the bad guy the numbers. It's the numbers. Like, numbers don't lie. Listen, those are your numbers. I'm no longer biased in who I give leads to anymore. Like, it's done.
Right.
Here are the percentages. If you truly are really good and you're great on this team, then be the best. Go perform better. Like, your numbers suck. I don't care what, like if you look at it in the professional athlete type side of things, there's great veterans that have done amazing things for organizations. Like I'll use baseball specifically because I think it feeds the most to this piece. You have these amazing all-star super power hitters over time, and you start to see their batting averages tank or fall off over their last years of their career. Mm-hmm. And they're coming to these teams wanting these special exceptions and special deals, but these are also the guys that just get cut, that just get let go because you're not up to par. I can go get the next best rookie that's performing at a higher level, and you've let ego and you've let your inefficiencies get in the way of your ability. And so that's why we have that 90-day rolling average and some of those other pieces, because I need to know who's performing best for me lately as well. And I don't have to have that argument with any agent on my team. I say, hey, if you want leads, if you want to climb the ranks, do better. Go dig into your database. Mm-hmm. You have all of these opportunities. Create some business, and your numbers will go up, and you'll be on platform. Plain and simple. And I don't have to deal with those egos the same way that a lot of other people have, because I've made that data visible to every agent on my team, and that's really, really key.
Yeah, I think that's super important, and you're right. The numbers don't lie, and it's a great way to ensure parity, and also like the whole playing favorites thing. Like there's so much politicking, right? In the team space, and for a system like Flex, where it's so numbers driven, and they really do care about their metrics, right? Zillow cares about their metrics, right? Like conversion, ancillary, like we'll just cast like that net of their metrics. And if you are grading them on those metrics, then you're going to reward the people that perform the best, obviously. Correct. So it makes perfect sense to me. And the one thing that I think is very special and unique about your system that I haven't heard anyone else do is lifetime, and then also measuring basically like an agent's ability to successfully follow up and close on leads that have been in the system for more than 180 days. That I think is super brilliant, because like in my head, it's almost like, dude, you could create a Zillow Flex nurture team. You could create the Zillow Flex shark team, right? The ones that just like go out there and kill the ripe stuff. And then after 180 days, it's like, all right, like let's give them to the nurture team, because the nurture team is actually going to be able to like convert these people. They have the patience. Yeah. They have, right. It requires a different skill set. You're 100%. You're 100% accurate in the sense that like, very few salespeople are good at both. Right.
Correct.
It's not
in the wheelhouse.
Yeah. Very, very few. Interesting, man. That's super cool. I'm learning a lot too. I'm like taking notes and everything. I'm like, cool. This is great. Now, one thing I wrote down here is, how do we strike that balance between ensuring that an agent is performing, but not KPIing them to death, right? Because like there's a balance there. So how have you? Because you're a numbers guy, right? So like you're obviously like the analytical piece of the component of the team. So is someone else handling those conversations, like kind of juggling the yin and the yang, right? Of like, okay, well, this is the metrics, and then this is like the human side of things, right? So like, how are you balancing that as an organization?
I think it's a tough conversation, because as soon as you start to give out those participation trophies or those opportunities of those lifelines multiple times, then people start to take advantage of it. And so at some point you do have to draw the line and say, hey, like, this is what it is. Like, I want you to succeed. I'm going to help give you the best opportunity to succeed, but you have to also want it, and you have to go and achieve it. And so you always give them the ability to repair, create opportunity to improve those KPIs, even if they're shut off for new lead flow, right? So like we give line of sight to help all our agents improve or rebalance their KPIs. We do deep dives with them, right? And we also give buffer lines. So if you're a brand new agent coming on the platform, the biggest thing we started to see right away was like, I'm terrified to take a connection because I don't want it to hurt my numbers. Like, my numbers are so important, like they matter. And so it's making them feel safe in that early scale and have that early time. And that comes from one-on-one accountability, and letting them transparently see their numbers, right? Like, if they don't know what their numbers are and they're just blindly going about it, it's a lot easier for them to dig themselves a hole. But if you help them become prepared and they're ready for those conversations and they're trained the right way, they're excited by metrics because they see themselves succeed and then they do well. And it is a numbers game. So the whole point is with volume, those percentages average out and we truly get to see the type of agent. But you as a team leader have to be confident enough to see the numbers and say, I'm going to trust the numbers and I'm going to pull the plug on a couple of these people because there is something else to remember. Not every agent is good at Zillow leads. Not every agent is going to be a good fit for this type of business. So sometimes that's the gut check that agent needed to say, hey, listen, like, this is just not your box. Like, let's work on open houses. Let's work on, self-generating lead sources because lead generation just might not be your strength. And that's okay. There's a lot of ways to do real estate. It's not just one way. Our team is not just Zillow leads. Like we are not in fact, Zillow is about 35 to 45% of our business any given month, right? It's a big chunk, right? But it is not 100% of our business. Like we're generating so many opportunities from other places. So there's actually a certain type of avatar that I look for when finding agents to add to the Zillow platform because it's not your typical everyday agent avatar. And so some of those conversations we're having with experienced agents specifically is, are you sure Zillow is right for you? Like, are you sure this is the box? Because it is different than what a lot of them have done. And so that's a big part of it as well, is knowing when to tell someone like, listen, I know you're not excited about these numbers or these KPIs, but maybe it's because this is just not the best use of your time.
What are those? What is that avatar, by the way? Like, let's talk high level. And of course, there's exceptions to the rule, right? But like, what is the average, perfect or quote unquote, air quotes, right? Perfect Zillow Flex agent look like?
Yeah. The over-analyzers are not a good fit for Zillow, right? The people that like are trying to be perfectionists struggle greatly with Zillow. So typically that's your really long-term experienced agent, because what ends up happening is they qualify themselves out of opportunities that were there because they're so worried about time efficiencies, and it happens all the time. So I'll hear a call and I'll listen, and it'll be a great agent, like just phenomenal real estate agent. And I'm listening to the call and I'm like, wow, like you were trying to qualify this lead so much so that you didn't just go on the appointment that they wanted because you thought in the back of your mind that they're not going to qualify for this house.
Yeah.
So I'm going to try and avoid showing them houses. I don't want to like commit to something, waste my time to show houses to this client because I can feel I've done this long enough. Like I know they're not going to buy a house. Like, and sometimes they are true, right? But sometimes they're not. And the one that they don't go on was the one that's going to contract.
Yeah.
And they missed out on it because they self-qualified. So I've actually seen more experienced agents have a lower conversion rate, but they're able to take less leads and still, convert on the ones that they hit home. But I almost look at that as like you're cherry picking, like you're trying to find the one that fits all of your boxes so you don't have to waste a lot of time showing houses. But that's not the best use of creating opportunity with Zillow, because what that agent doesn't realize is when you go and create that relationship with that lead that can't buy right now, they buy 6 months from now. And you lost out on that chance because you self-qualified them on that initial call.
Yeah.
Also, you don't know that their parents are with them on that showing. And those parents are buying a $1.5 million house down the street. And you could have had that crack at that opportunity on that one just because you heard that you have a 22-year-old trying to buy a house and they don't know what their credit's at. And you're like, this seems rough, but like their parents are helping with, like, you don't know the whole story. And so a good example is an experienced agent. They struggle on this platform. The vets struggle because they don't just do the job. To be honest, it's actually the hungry grinders that are willing to show a house at any time, anywhere, with limited knowledge, that are just able to just saying, yep, let's go show houses. I'm going to add a couple more. Let's get in the car. I'll meet you there. I'll see you soon. They'll just say yes. Those people, they attack it in a volume perspective.
Yep.
And what ends up happening is they stumble into opportunities that they didn't know was going to be an opportunity because they didn't let their ignorance or their assumptions get in the way of creating that opportunity. So I look for, like, sometimes newer agents are excellent on the platform as long as they're hungry and disciplined about just going to show houses if it's available.
Yeah, I love that. And obviously the hungrier they are, the more willing they are to pay their dues, so to speak. Right. And I definitely found
they're learning.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you. Like in terms of like the agents that were performing best for us on these sorts of like lead platforms, definitely were more on like the newer side of things, right? So, question for you on the training component, right? Because when I hear young and hungry, I hear new and inexperienced, right? And so
sometimes,
yeah. And so I'm assuming that a lot of the agents who are taking flex leads are coming in, they're either new, inexperienced, maybe they have some experience, right? But like, how are you training these agents to take the call, go on the showing, do the driveway consultation, convert them, get them to come to other showings, lock them in as a client. Now we got the settlement. They got to sign a buyer broker, right? So like there's a ton of training that's involved in terms of getting these agents up to speed to be able to handle these types of leads. So what does the training program look like for you guys right now?
So luckily our team as a whole manages training in that capacity ahead of time, right? So we view the leads department almost like a separate company. Okay. So like you can join the team and you get all of the basic general training that's needed to be a real estate agent before you can even apply to be a part of the leads program. It's a separate box, right? And so they've already gone through mentorship and potentially our full entire academy that we've built out for agents, basically top to bottom on massive lines of automated training, online training, in-person workshops, and one-on-one directed coaching and training before they've even given the opportunity to apply for leads. And then once they're on leads, it's more coaching. We have something called Zillow Boot Camp that we do specifically for Zillow, and we have something like that for all of our lead platforms. And so what we end up doing is that if one of two things, either if they're a brand new agent on the platform trying to earn a spot and get on there, we're requiring them to go to that Zillow Boot Camp. Or if they're an agent already existing on the platform, what happens is if they are hitting what we call our red flag metrics, which it's kind of like, hey, you should have gotten at least something, like you're falling way below standard. There's obviously this line of grace that's like in between that like it's not ideal, but it's satisfactory. Like we're not going to hound you if you're not there yet perfectly.
Yeah.
And I don't need you there. But as soon as they fall below those red flag metrics, we're also pinging them to say, hey, come to the Zillow Boot Camp again. I'm sure we can find a couple areas that we can help you improve so that we can get you back on track to maintain lead flow. So those are the big pieces. Is it's consistent, it's constant, there's practice, and there's line of sight for their own numbers. So we make their data publicly accessible to them at all times so they can see their areas of success as also in their weak points, right? Like we're recording calls, we're getting them in front of calls right away. And, that helps. Is we're very intentional, very beginning as we scale out new agents. But the whole point is none of that is possible unless you have systems and tools and the data to empower you to do that. Because if I didn't have any of that data, I would spend hours per agent, hours just digging in, because how do I even know what they're struggling on? Like if I don't have the data, like all I know from Zillow's perspective is I have an agent. They're not putting deals into contract. Their conversion rate's bad. Let's say they've taken 30 connections.
Yep.
And 0 contracts. Well, tell me what's wrong. I'd have to go dig for a long time if I didn't have any of my tools and my systems built the way that I do with data to tell me. And I'd have to personally, as a leader or someone of the sales top, like executive, would have to know how to dig into the weeds, figure out where this agent is hitting their roadblocks. Like what is actually causing their conversion issues? But now with data and some of the sheets and the systems I've built empowers my staff to quickly look at it and be like, oh, they're clearly struggling with this piece. Like if we improve this, like they're going to be fine. Like we just need to have them work on this one area. And that's really, really big because now I'm saving hundreds of hours a week of staff labor. And and really it's not saving hundreds of hours. What it allows me to do, instead of only having 1 or 2 agents to coach, now I can coach 25 in a given week on all of their metrics versus 1 or 2 and take up an entire staff time, right?
Yep.
And that's the big scale issue that team leaders are getting when they can only hire 5 to 10 agents. And that's a big spot that they end up in. Is like, man, how do you do it? Like we have 140 agents on our team. We have 100 on our Zillow platform. I had talked to team leaders and they're like, how the heck can you manage 100 people? This is why Zillow likes us, because we can do this at scale and manage that lead flow and rotate people in and out, because I don't have all 100 taking leads at a given time. It's a machine. I have 20 going on right now, getting their fill. And then I have those ones coming off. And then I have another 15, 20 coming on in this marketplace. It's a machine. It's revolving. But if you don't have systems and data to help you be empowered in that, you're done. There's no way you can do it. It's tough. Like, that's why they can't scale.
Well, and so a couple things come to mind. Number one, the only way that you can't scale is through systems, right? Like that's the only way that you can scale it. And you're right. Like a lot of team leaders get stuck in that 10 to 20 mark, or 5 to 10, really, right? Like 5 to 15.
Yeah, 5 to 10 is the first plateau.
Because they don't know how to develop those systems, or they don't have someone that can help them develop those systems.
Correct. They're doing it all themselves, typically, with limited resources.
100%. So let's and another thing before we kind of shift gears here, just like an overall question: have you started to implement the same accountability and tracking systems for Zillow? Like, are you also using this for other lead sources as well?
Yeah. I duplicated it, and so what I've found is that these other lead sources, they don't have enough data to provide me to do what I'm doing with Zillow. And what's actually happened is I've empowered those lead sources to be like, oh my gosh, like you actually use that? Like that actually helps you? And I'm like, yeah, like, do you want me to convert more? Do you want me to make you more money? Mm-hmm. Give me this data. And we've actually unlocked so many things, which here's the difference is Zillow, because they are more advanced with data, we're more on equal footing with so many of these other teams that are trying to optimize their data at the same level. But these other platforms, when I go to them and I ask for this data, I might be the only team getting this data from them because they haven't made it publicly accessible to all the other teams. So then now I'm performing at a massively higher level than every other team in the platform. And it's just because I have the data and I'm using it, unlike some of these teams, and we have systems in play for it. Right. So that helps a ton. And so now, instead of just only being able to control one lead source, I can manage 6, 7, 8 all at the same time. And so something to kind of consider that is unique is I actually have a leads department hub of data where every single source I have has its own data structure and its own analytics attached to it for each individual source. And then I take all of that source data and I send it up to my leads department hub so that I can take a 10,000 foot view and look down at my agents at scale and say, okay, agent A, you've taken 15 connections from Zillow and you've taken 10 connections from lead source B and 12 connections from lead source C. Now, in Zillow's eyes, you might not be at capacity, but I know you've taken 10 and 12 from these other sources. You're toast. Like, you can't do it anymore. And so, whereas other companies or other teams, they're not looking at the whole box as a whole in the way that they need to be able to scale. And they're only using their CRM as a basis. And so you don't catch capacity issues before they become issues. I catch them fast because I see how their leads are trending, and I pause them and I let them catch up before they drown and just lose opportunities. Right. So while other teams are letting their agents drown, I pause them, which actually helps the agent, and I can get those leads to somebody that needs the lead flow to help with their capacity.
And honestly, man, like, that's so self-responsible of you and your organization, because here's the thing, right? 9 out of 10 team leaders, if their agents are cranking whatever, they're just giving them leads. And guess what? At a certain point, that agent's conversion metrics come down. A bunch of leads go. They get
overwhelmed.
Yeah, they don't get answered. They don't get responded to. And they don't get touched. Yeah, thank you. And then the team leader or the sales director, whoever, they blame the agent. Right? They're like, "Oh, you lazy piece of whatever," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well,
and you see the roller coaster effect too. Like, here's the problem. Like, you have great months and then all of a sudden everybody's tanking. You're like, what the heck did all my contracts go? Like, we should be running this like a business. We should avoid the roller coaster effect. It should be streamlined. Let's use another sports analogy, because I think this is perfect for this. Now let's go into basketball this time, right? Yeah. I'm a big sports guy, so I use sports a lot, right? A coach is responsibility. Like, you can't have all of your star players on the court the entire game, every single game. It doesn't exist. It's impossible. Like you can't keep them at that efficiency. There is a certain line where your star's ability to perform at the highest level is surpassed because of energy and capacity of energy by a rookie or someone on the bench. That's why you have subs, because they need a breather. No. So yes, they're great, but up to a certain extent, and then their ability to perform at that level goes down. And now if you look at the two like being compared evenly, that star is now equal to that bench player based on the energy of the star player and full power of the bench player, if you will. And when that line crosses, you have to be efficient as a coach to realize like I would get more production out of my bench player now than I do my star at 45% energy. Like I have to realize that. So I have to replace that starter and I got to give them a rest. And as they build back up that energy, I need my bench players and my rotational players to just hold it down. Like that's the way that I look at it, right? Like I have to have them just don't break things. Just like keep it going, right? Yeah. And it's the same thing in like sports. You don't want to put your guy, you're not expecting them to blow you away. You're expecting them not to turn it over, not to make massive mistakes. Just keep the game going until I can get the star players back in and we can continue to climb. Like that's the vision for my platform. So when I'm rotating capacity, I'm catching when my star players are hurting because they won't tell me. Go to any competitive athlete. Do you think they're going to ask to come out of the game? Do you think they're going to be like, hey, coach, I need a breather? No. They want to be in there. They're attacking. Like they always think they're the best. But as a coach, you have to be good enough to say, no, you're out. Not because of your ability, because I know how winded you are based on lead flow. So I'm pausing you and doing it in an attackful way. It's like, listen, you're killing it. Thanks for your minutes. Go put a couple in contract, get caught up, feel good. You got showings this whole weekend. I can't give you any more showings or you're capped out. Okay. Let me get somebody else in that's hungry and ready to take some weight off of you. And when you're ready, let's talk about it next week and let's get you back on. Like I want you in the game, but just not when you're dead. Like if you have to take a call and say, sorry, I'm booked Friday, Saturday, Sunday with showings because Zillow's killed me this weekend. How about Tuesday next week? That's not good because the lead wanted to go see the house tonight. Right. If I give a new agent the opportunity, they're like, yeah, I can do tonight. Yeah. How about 4:00? You see what I'm saying? So like, that's the level of balance. Team leaders don't look at that. They're like, I want my stars on all the time, whenever, because they're my stars. Yep. And it makes your account lukewarm. And that's how you manage capacity. So I actually manage my capacity. I've broken up my marketplace into 4 major markets of lead flow. And I route based on location to create even more efficiencies and systems in my process. And then I route based on starters, positional, bench, and then even below bench. It's like you're on probation basically until you do training and like you caught up and like I feel confident to put you back into one of those 3 boxes. Sure. Right? Like you're in free agency right now. Yeah. And so I use that as a reference point because it shows me who do I want to have on at any given time. And my numbers actually point those percentages back to my team. So then I'm not also the ones making the decision. I can empower my staff. They can look at the numbers and be like, oh, this is a starter. I need to try and get them in the game. Oh, they've hit capacity. This box turned red. I need to get them out of the game. Like I want to make it that easy for my staff to the point where I can have a VA do it overseas at scale. And I don't even have to have in-person staff do it. I need one person to manage the platform and empower a group of VAs to manage it at a high volume. And I can run this same system, 5 different markets all at the same time at a high level. Whereas, some teams are struggling to just manage their 25 agents at capacity. And it's like, I don't know who to take off and when to put them on. And that's like every time I meet with a team leader one-on-one, which has been so empowering to be a part of Refuge and be a part of this system, because I'm meeting with team leaders one-on-one to say, hey, I get it. Like I've been there. Let's sit down together. Let's look at this together. Let's stop trying to bite the elephant all at once. Like we don't need to eat it all. Let's start with one problem, address it. Let me show you how I'm doing it. And then how do we implement my strategy into your box to give you hours back of your life and actually help you convert more deals? When I turn that switch on for team leaders, like I'm doing right now, they're like, oh my God, like this is a complete game changer. Like I could get to 100 agents. I'm like, yeah, duh. Like that's what I'm doing right now. Right. And so that's what these team leaders need to hit the numbers that they've dreamed of, right? Like it's all just systems and actually learning how to implement those systems into your business.
So you actually kind of answered one of my questions, which is who's managing these accountability systems? So it sounds like you've got a team of VAs that's doing that, and then you've got one person in-house who's probably like that.
Yeah, I got one my director of lead ops like right now, and he's managing all of my lead operations for all my lead sources. So he's managing all of them, and then he's overseeing my team of VAs that do a lot of the data.
Yeah.
Updating, all the analytics updating. And so they're empowering him to see the data. And I've trained him to interpret the data. That's really key. I have to spend the time to train him to think like I think and help manage that system in the same way. And then once we get to that level, we're able to hand it off, and I can go to a different bucket and help my team achieve greatness there, and then train the right way. And then if I need to come back and give refreshers, I can do that and do R&D and develop more tools for my team. Like that's the key, is that it's always evolving every day, every week, every year.
So this director of lead ops, are they also the one that is having the conversations with agents, say like, hey, Billy, I'm assuming like when they reach capacity, like that's a pretty understood thing. Like you've probably had some like sort of like overarching, like, hey, like guys, once you reach this threshold or whatever, like we turn you off.
Yeah, it's like a range.
But
it's a range. It's a it is from them. He is the one having the conversations with them.
Okay.
And we do it through our inner team messaging system, and we tap them and say, hey, we're just going to pause you for a couple of days. You just got a ton. Convert. Let's look at it next week and let's see how you're feeling for my starters.
Right.
And we put thresholds on lead capacity for the rotational players and the bench players. So they know, like when I tap, like, hey, I got a starter coming back on. You're going to have, I'll tell you when you're available to go back on. They know, they have the expectation, like, I'm not a starter yet. Like I have to be ready for it. It's so important to kind of paint it towards like, sports in that box, because people understand it. They're like, listen, your numbers aren't as good as theirs. I'm trying to help you get there.
Right.
I'm trying to help you improve.
Right.
But until then, you know that you're a rotational player right now. Your contract is not multi-millions of dollars. Like you're not the guy yet.
Yeah.
Like I want to get you there, but you have to know your spot currently on the team. And it's helped because now I don't have to argue or fight with these agents. Like they understand, they get the message and they're like, okay, thanks. And even the starters, when I say, hey, or when this individual, I see the messages when they reach out and they say, hey, we're going to pause you for a few days. You already taken 6 this last, 10 days. Let's give you a breather, like give you a couple minutes to catch up. What ends up happening is they're like, okay, thank you. They're like, they almost thank us now, because now they know. They're like, yeah, I was out of breath. Thanks for noticing. But they never would have said anything until I reached out and they said, thank you.
Right.
I was going to reach out. Sometimes they say like, I was going to talk to you guys about it. I was like, no, you weren't, but that's okay. Like we got you. And so now we are creating a level of efficiency that even some of these agents are reaching out to us to say, hey, can you pause me for 3 to 4 days?
Yep.
I'm full. Like that's such a cool feeling to know that I've empowered them and trained them, the agents, well enough to know and realize I'm good. I have enough leads, which no agent has ever said to our organization ever in the past. Yeah. It's all been volume, but they understand now, and their metrics are climbing. Like we're doing better than we've ever done.
That's amazing, man. We're coming up on time here. I did have a couple of last questions. So one that we skipped over that
let's shoot.
I don't even know if you guys do this, although I'm like 99% sure that you do. Call grading.
Yeah.
So who's running that system? My
VA.
Your VAs are running the call grading. Okay.
My VAs are running it. Yeah. So I have a VA listen to every single call, and I have a report card grade.
Yep. And
that report card is basically a grading rubric for them to red flag calls. And then if the call is red flagged of like, hey, like they're way off script, like they took a weird left turn, they send it to my lead ops individual to listen a second time and give a second analysis. And then the one-on-one conversation can happen from there.
Yeah. What the hell happened here?
But now with AI too, right? Like with all the AI stuff that's happening, we actually have automated summaries of every single call happen. So now my lead ops person doesn't even have to like listen to the call half the time. Like they can read the notes quickly based on the AI generated summary and like, oh, clearly you jacked this up. Yeah. Like, let me just reach out and like just talk to them real quick. Yeah. And it's been empowering. Like it's pretty cool. But yeah, it's really efficient for us now.
And that report card, what are the key? I'm assuming like there's kind of like certain, like, did you follow, like, did you get to this point in the script? Did you get to this point in the script? Did you ask for this, the showing?
Yep.
Did you close, right? Like, did you, okay.
We've made it really efficient. So our script, I've taken an approach of less is more.
Yeah.
It's always more. Less is more. The less you give an agent to screw up, the more likely they are to not screw up. That's if you give them too much, like they're going to make mistakes. Like we all would. Let's go to another sports analogy. Let's just keep this train going.
I love it, dude.
Let's go to golf.
All right.
Let's go to golf here. I'm a big golfer. I'm an avid golfer.
Are you a DeChambeau fan?
Yeah, I am, but I'm a Scheffler fan, so it hurt my heart just recently.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, if you go to golf and you go to a newer individual to the game of golf, anybody that's played golf, they realize how incredibly difficult golf is. And sometimes in real estate, when you're first starting out, it's like a fire hose and it's tough. So if I went to a brand new agent, I said, hey, I need you to ask for the appointment. I need you to make sure they're pre-qualified. I need you to make sure that they're looking in a specific zip code. They're not looking for the zip code. I need you to ask this question, this question, this. Like, if I'm giving them 25 different things, it's very difficult. In golf, if you're sitting over a golf ball and someone says, keep your head straight on the ball, left eye back of golf ball, full circle swing, you need to keep your grip like this, you need to keep your power shift. Like if you go through every single line item and say, hey, do all of that every single time and you'll be a great golfer.
Yeah.
And there's Bristol, they're like, are you crazy? Like, I'm just trying to make contact at this point. Like they're done. They hate golf. They'll never play again. And you got to do the same thing for real estate in certain capacities, right? So for us with scripting, our calls are less than 2 minutes every time. 2 minutes. There's a 3-item script. We're just doing 3 things every time. And, we allow for some slippage if like the client takes the agent off topic, but it's only after the 3 things have happened already. So like the appointment's already set. We're set to go. Like everything's good. Then if the client wants to build rapport and ask other questions, we allow for slippage. But the whole point is it's not actually for the client. It's actually to prevent the agent from hearing too many things that would deter them from wanting to go show that house, like we talked about. Because if the client starts talking about how they have a 540 credit score and they have no money, like at the back of the call because we asked the wrong questions, is that agent going to really be excited to go show that house now? No, they're not. If the client says, well, I'm kind of working with another agent, because the agent asked like, hey, are you currently working with another agent? Like, are you showing houses with someone? And then the client says, well, yeah, I am. I have an agent. And that agent may have shown them one house. It's a buddy. Like they don't know it was random. Yeah. But because they said that, now my agent looks at it as like, this sucks. Yeah. I have no chance. Like I give up. And it's like, no, had you shown the house, you would have realized that they saw one other house with a Redfin agent that just showed up and opened a door. And then they see how good you are. And now they want to use you. Like go be better. Like be the best agent you can be. So we keep our script tight. We keep it focused. And we grade on a very small list of items to keep it highly focused on what the objective is.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, I would say that definitely was one of my shortcomings as a team leader is that, I gave them the script that I used day one. Right. But this is this is 8 years, that's 10 years of experience versus 10 days or, 10 weeks or 10 months. And it's like, dude, there's no way, there's absolutely no way. So I love the fact that you've, for lack of a better word, dumbed it down, but really brought it down to like the bare bones minimum. And at the end of the day,
laser focus.
We know one thing I know for certain is that the second you get someone face to face with one of your agents, everything changes.
Everything does. Yep. That's the number one priority. Meet as many people as you humanly possibly can.
Right.
Because I know if an agent meets 80% of the calls that they get, they're getting contracts. Even if they're terrible at real estate.
Yeah.
They'll stumble into contracts because they showed up, they answered the phone, they opened up the door, and they said, how can I help you? How can I serve you? If I get that from my agent, it's great. The agents that struggle on this platform are the ones that find excuses why not to go show that house, and they lose deals. That happens all the time.
So just a quick comment here. Average showings per client. This seems to me like an underrated KPI. Something that maybe not a lot of people track. First of all, how are you tracking? How are
terribly
you tracking
difficult.
That? Yeah.
I don't. I empower my agents to track it for themselves individually.
Okay.
Right. So I have no way of manually tracking it for myself. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have to trust and rely. And if I start to ask the agents to report like how many they've done, then I'm out.
Yeah.
But if I value the importance of what it is and I show the agents, I'm like, hey, as an agent, you should be tracking this so we could track your business and financials. Like this is their KPI to track for themselves.
Yeah.
And then they can come to me and they say, hey, Keith, like I'm averaging 26 showings per contract. And if I get that number from this agent and this agent over here says, yeah, I'm only 8.5 showings per client. And I know me, when I was in real estate, I was at like 4.5 for something stupid because I knew how to ask for the close quickly, often. I didn't waste time. I was efficient.
Yeah. I
know that the 26.5 showings per agent, they have a massive struggle with asking for the close. Whereas the agent, that might be 4.5 or 2.5. I'd be like, man, how many are you missing out on because you weren't willing to show more than one house? Like that average might be too low. And that's why you don't have as many closings as you like. Yeah, you're showing 2.5 houses per closing on average, but you only have 2 deals. Well, had you maybe been a little bit more flexible, maybe you'd have 4 or 5. So the pendulum swings both directions on efficiency. It's all for coaching.
Right.
And the more data I have, the better coach I can be.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
The reason I was asking is because that was one thing that I always struggled. It was a metric that for the last couple of years, I was tracking, and the way that I did it honestly was I had one of my VAs Slack every agent every week. How many houses did you show this week? And it was crazy, dude, because as you might guess, right? Like you'd probably be shocked to hear that not every agent would reply to the VA every week. And so, it's shocking, right? Some weeks it'd be 70% of the agents reply. Some week it'd be 20, so it was always a struggle to really, have great data there. So that's why I asked, because underrated, super underrated KPI.
100% it is.
Yeah.
Yep.
So cool, man. Well, listen, we're running up on time here. Before I let you go though, just leave us with one final little golden nugget of wisdom when it comes to Zillow, Flex, accountability, agent training, anything surrounding the Flex and the systems that you've created around them.
So I'm going to give it a phase 2 nugget. Okay. This is a phase 2 box.
Love it.
Okay. Let's say you want to dive deep and you want to build out, and let's get past the point of you've already reached out to us. We've already had, an opportunity to show you what we're doing, which is, I think your number one step is just let us help you. We're here to serve. That's my goal, is just to serve team leaders, because I know how tough it is. I've been there. But phase 2, this is for your own personal mindset. You get all the data, you're looking at it all, right? The next thing that I would want people to do is I would want you to take a Sharpie. If we did it on paper, let's just say hypothetically, or we can do it on paper or whatever. What if we blacked out every single agent's name on your roster? You didn't see their name. All you had was data. That's all you could see was just numbers, right? You blacked out every name, or you changed it to agent A, agent B, agent C, and we shuffled it all up and we organized it, we sorted it out. You had no idea who anybody was in your account.
Yep.
And we looked at it together, finally from fresh eyes. Who would you put on your platform? Who would you want to empower? Who's doing well? Who's not? If you could let your ego aside and let the agents that are serving you, or the people that are your buddies or your friends, and if you could push that aside and you could truly look at it from a third-party perspective, then you can actually finally see what's wrong. You can finally look at it with fresh eyes. So a huge takeaway that I would do for people that don't have a lot of data, take the data you do have, cross out all the agents' names, hide it from your field of view. Just look at it from finally, for the first time, a third-party perspective. Look at it and say, where is my weakness? Not as a friend or a coach or who's going on, but truly looking at the data of who's doing well and who's not, who's struggling and why. You'll start to finally take the leap towards, oh, now I get it. And now you can start to look at your own business that way, because what ends up happening is you start with agents. That's the easiest step to take because it's not you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not you. Your agents that you're looking at, like that's not your data. That's not your conversion rate or your metrics. Like, so it's easy to start there. But then once you take that step, it becomes that much easier to look at your own business and be like, oh, where am I struggling with at a third party view? Wow, my numbers don't look that good, because there's a lot of team leaders that are still taking leads alongside them. And you're like, oh crap. And I've done this exercise with people.
Yeah.
And they show up on this list. Like I have them as a line item on their own list.
Oh no.
And I'm like, yeah, which agents do you want to put on leads, or why and how? And the light bulb goes off and they realize, oh my God, I need to get out of production. I need to do what I've been called to do. I need to be a coach. I need to serve. I need to lead. Stop selling houses. That's what I would do, is as soon as you can take yourself out of the fold and truly look at it, from non-judgmental eyes, like truly look at it from a 10,000 foot view without any type of outside factors stepping in, your business evolves overnight, immediately.
Yeah. And it's so funny, man, because like the truth is, and not to get too philosophical here, but like there is so much ego involved in
Tons.
In the industry.
That's step one.
And team leads have I believe, and this is me having interfaced with hundreds now of team leaders, and have dozens of team leaders who are friends, who I would consider friends. And the ego definitely gets in the way there. And what you said is so true, right? It's like, hey, like let's stop playing favorites, right? Like, and not saying that like everyone does, right? But
it's subconscious sometimes.
And here's the other thing too, right? Is that I really truly believe that one of the biggest things that gets in the way of team leaders' growth is treating their team like a family, right? And like, oh, I don't want to have the hard conversation with so-and-so, right? Like, and of course, now you've evolved and grown to the point where your lead ops person can kind of take the brunt of the blame, right? So to speak, but you aren't always there, right? Like you have to start somewhere, and you run towards that conflict and have those difficult conversations with the people that are, effectively killing your business by, taking way too more leads than they should. Right. And so.
Correct.
Yeah, man. Couldn't agree more. This has been super.
I love it.
Super, super, like so much knowledge dropped here, man. Really, really just, dude, like you're the man, dude.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah. Many more to come. So excited for all the future.
100%, man. All right, cool.